Welcome, everyone. I'm Professor Joanne Ordilli from the Rutgers Business School, and this is Tech for Business. You're probably here because you're having trouble loading a big file into MySQL. You're in the right place. I will show you how to load big files into MySQL on Windows, even if you can't load those files into Excel. If you happen to have a Mac instead, then look at the description of this video for a link to my similar video on Macs. This is a step-by-step video, so we need a big file, and the file we will use has a link here on the slide and also a link in the description of this video. This file has 1,075,446 rows and 34 columns. It represents the tonnage and value of freight shipped from one state to another in the United States, including domestic shipments, shipments of imports, and shipments to be exported. In the spirit of good provenance for all of our data, the citation for the data is here. The data is part of the freight analysis framework from the U.S. Bureau of Transportation Services. We will do this upload in 6 steps. First, we will download the zip file and unzip it. Next, we will configure MySQL Workbench to do a fast load. We will create a table to receive the loaded data and enable the fast load also on the server because both MySQL Workbench and the server must be prepped to do this. We will load the data and then we will confirm the success of the load without using a spreadsheet program. So let's get started. Our first step is to download the data. So I'll click on this link here, hopefully. You can see that the file is being downloaded. Oops, and apparently I downloaded it twice. Not to worry, we'll cancel the second one. And now that the download is complete, we will go to the folder for downloads and we will unzip the file by saying extract all, putting it in the default directory for the extract. And now what we have is the data file here. And we have what I call a data dictionary, which is here called a metadata file. This file describes all of the columns in the data set. And also it explains codes that are used to encode the data so that you can interpret the data. Now that we've done that, we're going to move on to configuring MySQL Workbench to do a fast load. So let's go there. Here's MySQL Workbench. To configure it to do a fast load, we're going to right-click on whichever square you use to log in. Unfortunately, my computer is a little sensitive, so let's right-click and edit the connection. Okay, we're looking for the Advanced tab under Connections here. So this is the Advanced tab. And in this Advanced tab, what we would like to put is opt local INFILE equal 1. This will enable the fast load in MySQL Workbench. We're going to close this and log in. Okay, the next thing we want to do is to determine where we're going to put this big table. So my big table is part of a project, so I'm going to create a database for it. And I'm going to call it FAF after the freight analysis framework. So I will execute this query and refresh my schemas. And I have now my FAF database. I'm now going to use that database as something that as a default so that all my commands will execute there. You may have tried to upload your big file using the data import wizard, and we're going to use it to do a quick creation of the table that we're going to load into. So the first thing we're going to do is click on Tables under FAF, and we're going to say Table Data Import Wizard. Then we're going to browse to the file that we extracted. It looks like we're already there, downloads and the directory. We're going to choose that file. When we do that, a nice side effect of that is that we get the whole path name for getting to that file, and we will need it later. So I'm going to copy it. Then I'm going to go through the steps I normally would go through to use the data import wizard. I am going to say create the table in the database that I started out with when I clicked on tables. And I'm going to need to change every attribute here. Remember, there are a lot of them to be text. The reason that I do this change is because text will accept any values at all from the input file. So if there's missing data, there's data where someone typed not applicable, that's supposed to be a number. All of those things will be accepted. Once I get the data into MySQL, I can wrangle it, as we say, or clean it up, and then change the types to the correct types for the project that I'm doing. Okay, so in order to do that, I'm just going to change all of these to text. And I do that by clicking on ones that aren't text and typing T and going to the next one. There are quite a few of these, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video until I get done. I'll be back in a moment. Okay, I'm back. Now we can see that all the attributes are text. Okay. So I'm going to say next here, and it's going to start importing the data file. Since this is a really big file, you see there's no perceivable progress here. It is actually importing rows, but it will take a very long time. And so I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to say, yes, please do stop the import process. Okay, so MySQL Workbench here is having an issue. We're going to just close this, finish our script, and then we'll restart MySQL Workbench just to make sure it's working for our upload. I'm refreshing my schemas, and in my schemas, you see the table that the data import wizard was trying to create. The good thing about this is that this table has a complete create statement for all the columns in the table I want to upload. And remember, I copied the location of the file. So I'm going to put the location of the file here on line 7 so I can use it later. It'll have to be in quotes when I use it, so I'll put quotes around it right now. Okay. Before I use it, however, I do really need a create table statement to load data into. So I'm going to right click on this table. You see here all the attributes I need. I'm going to copy to clipboard the create statement, and then I'm going to paste it here. So now I have a complete create table statement with very little effort. The only thing I want to change is I would like my table to be called freight underscore source. Great. The next thing I need to do is I need to enable the fast upload on the server. And to do that, I need to type in the command set global local INFILE to true. Okay, that will enable the fast upload on the server. And then I need to write some code to load my file. And that code is load data local INFILE, the name of my file, which I saved, into table, the name of my database, which is FAF, dot, the name of my table, which is freight underscore source. And then I need a few additional things here. I need to tell MySQL what separates the columns. So I'm going to say columns terminated by a comma. And I also need to tell MySQL how the lines are terminated. So I'm going to say lines terminated by carriage return line feed. How do I know that? I know that through trial and error from loading the file previously. It turns out for files that are created on Linux or on Macs, typically the lines are terminated only by /n or line feed. However, if the file is created on Windows, then it is often terminated by carriage return line feed. And so some experimentation is necessary to determine this. Once we get the file in, I'll show you a little bit about how that experimentation is done so that in the future you can do it on your own. The next thing I have to worry about is that the slash that goes in this direction is interpreted as an escape character, except for these special ones here. So this just means, hey, MySQL, I really want a J in my string. So in actuality, to include a slash in this string, we have to double these. So we have to go through and double every one. This is part of why I left the files in downloads, so there wouldn't be too many levels. Okay, so that completes our code for loading the file. And what I want to do now is save this script, just in case. And I'm going to save it as FAF upload script. Okay. And then I'm going to restart MySQL just in case. So I'm closing it down. I'm going to find it again. There it is. Hopefully I clicked it. There we go. Log in again. Here we are. And so now I can execute this whole script. Let's do it line by line. I'm going to use FAF. I'm going to create my table. You can see these things succeeding down here. I'm going to set my global INFILE. And now I'm going to load my data. So you can see that the data load has started and it's running. I'm going to pause this for a moment, come back when the file load is completed. Okay, the file upload completed. It took 49.8 seconds. So 50 seconds and we're done the upload. Notice that I received 1,075,446 rows. I can right click and copy the response from the action line here, and I can just put in a comment that info. Now I'd like to check, did I actually get all the rows in that file? The easiest way I found to do that is by opening a command window. You may be unfamiliar with this interface, but it lets you type commands directly to Windows. if you say CD, you see the folder or directory that you're in. And I know that the directory that I need is downloads. That is underneath users Joanne. And so I'm going to CD to downloads. I can always say dir to see what the directories are. Um, I can also say dir F star to say all the ones that start with F. And so here's the directory that I created for this particular file. I'm going to copy that name with Control C. I'm going to say, let's go there, CD, Control V. This is the directory name. I can say dir again. Here's the file. And so now what I want to do is I want to count the lines in this file to know how many rows were in the file. And I can do that here on Windows by entering the command find/v/c. So find finds a string in a file. I want to pick a string to look for that doesn't exist in the file. So I'm going to use my name and then the file name. So I can just say Control C for this. Type that down here. Okay, so I'm all set up. Find looks for a string in a file. If you say /v, it locates the strings that don't match instead, and /c counts them. So let's say enter. And we see 1,075,446 lines, which exactly matches. So we know we got all the rows in the file. The next thing that we'd like to check is that the rows lined up correctly. Okay, so let's just pause our window for a minute. So in order to do that, I should look at a couple rows. So I'm going to select a couple rows. Let's say 3. And I'll execute just this query here with the single lightning bolt. And what I see when I do that is that, hey, I actually loaded the header information as one of the lines. So I'm going to have to delete that line. I tend to always do that because if you look at this, it's a kind of beautiful thing. They all line up, so that looks good. Now, if I was worried that I got the lines terminated by incorrect, I definitely need to check the last value here in 2 ways. And so how am I going to do that? Turns out there's a program called More, which will display the beginning lines of a file and stop until you hit return. So let's do More, and the name of our file. Also need a blank there. Okay, and so you see the first line with all the names of the columns, and then here's the second line, and it terminates in 3.89044. 3.85944. 3.85944. That looks good. I typically also check all the values. That's me. You might want to do that. The next thing is, okay, so I got the value of the last one incorrectly. Let's make sure that there's no extra stuff in that field, which would happen if there was some additional line termination character I didn't know about. To do that, you would right-click on this and you would say, copy field with quotes. Okay, and just paste it up here for a quick check. And you see that there is no additional kind of space or character displayed. If, for example, there was a line feed in the string, the second quote would be down here. So I'm pretty confident. The other thing that you can do, if you want to be completely sure, is you can look to see if you can query that field. So T miles underscore 2023 equals 3.859044. Okay. I probably should have said limit one, it would have stopped. But it's searching my whole file for that value and it finds one line, the line we were looking at, and so we're good to go. So the last thing I have to do is remove that extra header line because ultimately what I plan to do is create a target table with the correct types for all the numbers and then insert into that table by selecting all the rows from this table. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. Before I do that, however, I have to definitely get rid of this line that has column headers in it. And so I will delete from freight source where, what was the first? FR orig, where FR orig equals the string FR orig. This works or doesn't work depending upon how you have MySQL Workbench configured. So let's give it a try. Okay, it didn't work here, just to show you what that means. You copy the response, click on the line, copy the response, bring it up here where you can see it. Okay, it says you are using safe update mode and you tried to update a table without a where clause that uses a key column, right? So that's the only kind of update it will allow unless you take off safe update mode. Right? If you update with a where clause that references a key column, you're only going to change one line. However, if you update with a where clause that specifies anything else, conceivably you will change every line or delete every line from the table. And it wants to avoid that and protect you. So there are two things you can do to have more power. One thing is you can come up here, I believe, to edit and look at preferences. And in preferences, if you click SQL editor and you come all the way down to the bottom, you can unclick safe update mode and say OK. You then need to restart MySQL Workbench and safe update mode will then be off and you will be able to do this update. Alternatively, you can turn it off with a command, kind of like the command we use to turn on fast uploads. We're going to say set SQL safe updates equals 0. No, and no blanks. And an underscore here. Oops. Okay, and so we're going to execute that. And then we're going to do our delete. And it will remove that one row, but it needs to check them all in order to be sure that it got them. So it takes a minute. So you see here, one row was deleted. Congratulations, you have now uploaded a big file to MySQL. I promised to tell you a little bit about how I plan to proceed in order to create the table for my analysis. What I plan to do is to come up here and create another version of this table, which I'll probably put down here. And I'm going to call this table freight. This is what I call my target type file. or excuse me, target table. And I will change each of these types to be the type of data that is in this particular column. I believe this first one, if we take a quick look and we say select distinct, FR origin from uh, uh, freight underscore source. I believe this one is a rather small integer. It takes a while to do this exploration, but it's much easier to do now that we have this file here in MySQL Workbench. So it looks like it's a bunch of numbers, or these could be character strings. It also looks like there's a null value here. And so given this range, I'm going to call fr underscore origin, I'm going to call it small int unsigned. And I'll do this for each and every one of these attributes. I'll explore them. I'll figure out what type I would like them to be. And then when I go about inserting the data into this target table, I'm going to say insert into freight, select. I could say star from freight source. If I do that and I have numeric values only, that will successfully just convert the numeric values from text, from the text format they're in to an actual number. If there's a null, however, and it's not actually an accurate null, then I have to actually go through some additional effort to replace this empty string here with a null. And so that typically looks like null if, let's sort of do this on the next line, do this, null if fr origin is the empty string. Otherwise, it would be the same value that it has, like 801. This will successfully insert all of the attributes into this target table, provided I do this analysis and I actually list all the attributes here. So that's a little bit about how I plan to go forward. If you would like to do the project that my class is doing this fall in 2024, I will provide in the description a link to the project description, and you're welcome to do the project. I'll come back in January and show you how I did the project and explain it step by step. In addition, in the description, you will find this script, the few slides that we used, a link to the data set, a link to the Mac version of this video if you need that. If this video has been helpful to you, please click like and subscribe so you'll get updates on upcoming videos, including the videos on the completion of this project. And I'm really glad you joined me today. I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. So thanks a lot and see you then.